Sunday's defeat to Canada was brutal, but we're still on track to reach the World Cup. So is the U.S. men's national team program really in crisis, like certain corners of the internet claim, or are we making a mountain of a molehill? Your two favorite former U.S. men's national team players are here today to take stock of an inconsistent qualifying campaign, as well as rank the top 5 Concacaf players on current form. The USMNT Hour begins right now. And just a reminder, everyone, this is a YouTube exclusive. So thank you for joining us. And ask not what your U.S. men's national team hour can do for you. Ask what you can do for your USMNT hour. And the answer is simple. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, activate the notification bell, and drop us a comment into the live chat because it makes us happy. And for all of you audiophiles out there, make sure you keep following the Qué Golazo podcast. It's a free daily podcast covering all things in the beautiful game. All we ask is in return that you just leave us a glowing rating and review. That would make us happy. Again, as a reminder, this one is just on YouTube for today, but the Qué Golazo podcast goes on and on and on. There will be another episode going out today as well. So, and finally, we have a winner to announce from Sunday's Paramount Plus $100 gift card giveaway. Congratulations to Tony Martz at Costco Martz. Check your Twitter mentions because producer Des has contacted you to see how you can redeem this gift card. It's pretty amazing. Congratulations. And we appreciate all of you guys for being a part of this. Obviously, we set the bar higher and higher for each of you to win a free gift card, and you're reaching those heights every time. Jimmy Conrad, what's going on, man? That was a long monologue from me, right? Doesn't feel that good, does it, Jimmy?
I feels fine because I like to hear you be Santa Claus. Well, no, you get to be Santa Claus, get to give out free stuff. Yeah. And of course, we want to make sure that everybody's ticking the boxes and following us on all the appropriate platforms and giving us the support. And guess what? We want to support you in return. This is a win-win relationship, everybody. Everybody's going to get something out of this. Mm-hmm. So that's all I wanted to say. Great to see you, though, Heath.
Jimmy, how we feeling, man? I mean, some news updates, right? We got Honduras might be without a coach for Wednesday's game. But before we talk too much about that, how are you feeling now? You know, we're just a little bit more removed from a match day where Canada not convincingly, but did everything they had to do to beat the U.S. They beat the U.S.
Well, you know, as you surf the internet, we got on our surfboards and surf the internet. You see some things get recirculated. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is around Greg Berhalter, the manager of the U.S. men's national team, suggesting that we were dominant in this game against Canada. And that triggers me because we weren't dominant. And I get a little twitchy, I get a little anxious. I get a little emotional, I would say, when I start to see him go down this road of, and it felt so over the top and almost unlike Greg to be this overly positive about a performance that I feel like he's doing it to protect the players. So then I'm like, hey, you know what? Scale back. I've done enough coaching courses, done enough coaching myself to know where this narrative goes. And for everybody that's maybe doesn't have the coaching experience, you've seen it with other coaches around the world if you're following the game pretty closely, that they do certain things to protect the players. And I think this was a way to shift the attention onto him by saying some stuff that maybe he wouldn't normally say and take it away from his players that might be targeted for some abuse. With regard to Matt Turner maybe not having his best game, Miles Robinson not having his best game, Christian Pulisic still not playing particularly well. So I'm less triggered there. But I will say that we are playing Honduras at the perfect time. They are all over the place. They're, as you mentioned, their coaches came out and said, the whole thing's a disaster. Nobody even really cares anymore.
Yeah, by the way, Jimmy, let me give you the full quote just to give anybody who's watching this some context. My staff and I are at an unfortunate time where everyone's patience is gone. At a stage where this job is unpleasant, we're in a situation where there's no respect or credibility. It's not working. And obviously that was translated from Spanish to English, so apologies if there's a word or here off. But I think the gist of it, translated by Nico Cantor, is that it's an absolute shit show.
Right. So imagine if we couldn't beat that team at home with a World Cup berth looming. I know we're going to have our own special preview about this particular game, but this news just broke about the Honduras manager coming out and saying this. I don't know if you say stuff like that. I don't know how much longer you think you're going to be manager. Yeah. That sounds like a death wish for me, but I don't know. So that's how I'm feeling. I went on CBS Sports HQ earlier today, and the first question was exactly the same as yours. How am I feeling? And I'm like, why are you bringing up old stuff? I want to look forward, baby. I want to look forward to Honduras. So I look forward to getting into that, even though we probably won't have Tyler Adams. And there's probably some other question marks that I don't want to panic yet about. But, there's a lot to unpack. And I just wonder, if you're Greg Berhalter, let's say it like this. Where do you focus your attention, Heath? Because that game, as much as you want to say things were dominant publicly, privately, you'd be a guy like, yeah, we didn't really make them suffer. We didn't really trouble them. They weren't scrambling. Yeah, of course. The keeper made a good save on a Weston McKennie header, and he had to be alert for, maybe 10 minutes of the second half where we really had to be on it. But outside of that, I don't really feel like we made Canada sweat too much. Do you agree with those sentiments first? And then second, what do you think Greg is trying to do to solve some of these problems, mainly trying to score in the first half? We've only done it twice in 10 World Cup qualifying games so far. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think dominant in some ways is, again, I think in most ways is a sort of a miscalculation or a misstep, because I think we did dominate sort of the run of play, but the game gave us that, right? That's what I think Canada were willing to do after we gave them a goal in the 7th minute. Of course,
right,
they're
exactly,
take it.
Yeah.
So if you're Canada on the flip side, you're like, well, if you want to call that domination, great. We came out of that with 2-0 win, and we weren't really pressed. We didn't really suffer. We didn't have to make any, other than Borjan's big save that he made on the header. There wasn't a ton of things going on. Or was it a header? Or was that off the Aronson hit? But either way, he didn't. Those are the only two chances that really came from the game. It wasn't like we made them suffer or that we dominated in the sense where you go, well, the scoreline didn't really tell the whole story. Sometimes we say that in the context of a win or a loss. And this didn't seem to be the case, at least in my book. So I think dominant is the wrong way to put it. Do you think we learned anything? I'm asking, did you learn? Do you think something was learned from that game? Like, did we get better? Did we show a little bit more of ourselves, whether for better or for worse? Or was it just one of these? Course.
Well, I learned that we struggle. This isn't a new learning, but it sometimes things get solidified. And I think that if we give up a first goal to a team outside of the Honduras game, which feels a little bit different now, knowing what we know about this Honduras team, we were only 3 games in when we were down 1-0 to them. And they actually played pretty well in their first 2 games prior to playing us in San Pedro Sula before we scored 4 on them in the second half. That we will struggle against teams that score first and play low block. And if you're a team that ultimately draws us in the World Cup, you're going to have plenty of evidence of where we struggle. And if we can't be threatening on set pieces, then we lose out on one opportunity, another dimension to our attack. And that makes me nervous. Now, Christian Pulisic took some very poor set pieces yesterday. And so you wonder, okay, the dude just got stripped of his captain armband to give to Tyler Adams, which I don't think is talked about enough, which I think is the guy was the captain in Columbus. And then 3 days later, Tyler Adams is the captain. That's interesting. So you have that. Now I feel like you might want to take him off of set pieces because
do you read into that
consistency. I do read into it, and I think.
What do you read into that in terms of form or in terms of leadership or both?
Both.
I guess they're one and the same in a lot of ways, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's one less thing for him to worry about. He doesn't have to go out there and be the leader of men. He can just go out there and kind of focus on his own game.
Right.
I do have questions of at least in this particular game, the in-game management that I actually thought Greg was okay at, and then because he hasn't moved Christian Pulisic around at all in 2 straight games when things weren't going well on the left side to cut in on his right, and not to even try it, just to say, hey, flip-flop for 10 or 15 minutes. We've already talked about this. I thought was pretty disappointing. I wanted to see a little bit more. And maybe even Christian telling Greg, hey, I'm going to switch. Or you know what? Sometimes players just do it on their own. Taking some initiative or like, hey, let me just get a different look from another side of the field. I'm pretty sure Brendan Aronson would be like, all right, I'll switch with you, team away. Sure, man, let's go for 5 or 10 minutes and see how it goes. And what's Greg going to really do about it? I'm not trying to tell him to have a mutiny out on the field, but it would be worth giving that a look or even moving him central to see if he can combine in a different way, especially with our number 9. So, yeah, he's just not in a good way right now, Christian Pulisic. So it's
well,
Jimmy, I don't know. What are any learnings for you? I mean, I think that we missed some leadership in the back line as well and organizing us in a way where I was pretty surprised that we gave up a pretty cheap goal, that first goal, and then our heads went down. I didn't feel like we punched back like we had normally or as we had normally seen before.
Yeah, I agree. I think, for me, I think the learnings is that we're not as good as we think we are. We go off after I think is a solid win, and wasn't a great win, but it was a win. And then we turn into something a little bit less than that. And I don't know if that's ego. I don't know if that's in our head, but like now I start to understand. I'm not giving Greg Berhalter any excuses. we put out almost the same team, and that team was very, very different, right? Take out
Mhm.
Walker Zimmerman. It's also a little bit worrying that a guy who hasn't been in the national team for a decent period or wasn't the guy is now the guy that when he's not playing, you see a back line that's very, very different. It's totally understandable when you look at Robinson, when you look at Mark McKenzie, when you look at just that back group, pretty young and inexperienced in terms of the international level. Having said that, you get called into the national team because you're ready to play at the national team. You're ready to play at the international level. So you don't get a ton of excuses. Now those guys have all played in crucial games and in big games, so I expect them to be a little bit better than that. But on the flip side, we didn't create a lot of chances either. And Jimmy, it's funny that the comment section is obviously we're not able to put comments up on the screen right now. It's not allowing us to do that. So I'm just going to read some of them off of people that have been posting on YouTube. GGG's excuses are becoming insulting to our intelligence. Two worst coaches in CONCACAF are Tata Martino and Berhalter. Turner's lack of ability to play with his feet has been glaring the last 2 games. I agree with that. But that was always something that we knew and something that we discussed quite frequently as to, like, do you go with Stefan or do you go with Turner, right? Turner, shot stopper. We liked the way that he was, had a great run of games of keeping clean.
Heath Pearce has been frozen. I might have to take over right now until we can get Heath sorted out.
Flip side, you have,
there he is.
You've got Canada really do be on that counterattacking merchant vibes. USA did not dominate Canada, the Canada game, saying so takes credit away from Canada's efforts. All those Berhalter apologists silent now. GGG won't make any changes. I mean, we knew this was coming, right? We knew that and then Ike or Ike Dunaway said Zimmerman not being able to play isn't being talked about enough. Most consistent center back on the roster at the moment.
I talked about it.
I
don't know if you saw or listened to our show yesterday. In the recap, I talked about that quite a bit. And I don't think we were trying to make any apologies for Greg. I think we've all both come on here and said he hasn't maximized the potential of this group.
Right.
But I guess
also the key moment, the thing in there is moment, Jimmy. Moment
right,
in that quote is moment. And everything happened so fast in the national team that we go by a couple of months and now we can't win without Walker Zimmerman on the field. I mean, I know he's been a big part of it, but like,
I get it.
You know, other players do need to step up as well because we didn't have Walker for a long period as well. And we were finding ways to get results.
Do you think do you feel like John Anthony Brooks should have been involved in this particular window?
I mean, you look in retrospect and
everything looks great in retrospect.
Yeah. And you say, yeah, of course. Would it be nice when Walker Zimmerman doesn't play to have another sort of more mature, more well-balanced player there? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. It'd be amazing. But like, there's obviously something there. And we've talked about it before. Like funny. Maybe he's the right guy to bring in at when the circumstances are there. And this seemed like the circumstances, but they didn't anticipate not having Walker Zimmerman. You don't anticipate giving up a goal against Canada in the 7th minute. And so it's tough to predict.
I'd like to hear the comments and the thoughts of the people watching or listening. Because after the Canada game, John Anthony Brooks, the first one, John Anthony Brooks didn't do well, right? Kyle Aaron beat him to the spot. They scored 1-1, and he just seemed a little bit off the pace. And it seemed like everybody was clamoring, like, why aren't we bringing in Chris Richards? Why aren't we playing, we got this guy who plays for Bayern Munich.
Plays at Hoffenheim. Yeah, big club, playing all the time.
Yeah, like he's played all the time, and Bayern Munich signed him for a reason, and now we put him in against Canada, and John Anthony Brooks isn't there, so people in some ways got their wish, and we lose 2-0. Now, was Chris Richards at fault for the goals? I'd give it more to Miles Robinson than I would give it to Chris Richards.
I mean, they both got 1-2'd.
Yeah, they did. I mean, there was no anticipation of what could be potentially happening. The awareness of Kyle Aaron in that particular moment on the first goal, excellent. The awareness of Kyle Aaron the last time and his desire to get into a spot to make something happen in that first game against us, excellent. So I don't know. It's just interesting how quickly we forget about some of the things we were asking for before, and then when we got them, they actually didn't pan out either. And to your point, I'm glad you brought this up because we didn't talk about it yesterday in the recap. What we were demanding before this window started was that we kept some consistency in the lineup because we thought we'd be able to build that rapport in some ways. And I do still believe that's the way forward because we want our guys that we think are starting to shape up into our top 11 to get as many repetitions together, even when they get punched in the face, because they have to learn how to solve those problems out on the field. And we got that. We got our wish. Now, I was expecting Ricardo Pepi, not Jossie Zardes. All right. And I was expecting Walker Zimmerman to start, but he had a bit of a hamstring thing. So they went with Miles or Chris or whoever was going to be the opposite of Walker, though I think it was going to be Walker and Chris again, from what I understand. But everything else was the same. So, well, Aronson starts because Weah couldn't come in. So you have a couple changes that almost, well, 2 of them were forced due to Weah and Zimmerman having issues. And then Zardes was just a personal choice from Greg. we got what we wanted, and yet it didn't work. And so that bums me out too, because then it kind of maybe reinforces Greg's mind. I should have made 5 or 6 changes, Yeah. And it's a slippery slope. That's all I wanted to say. And sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for in both ways, either what Greg's thinking and what we're thinking, as these emotional fans.
Let me ask you this then. Do you think anybody played bad? We've run with this theme since the start of qualifying, where you need enough players that are like 8s, 9s.
We had more 5s yesterday.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Wasn't that they were bad or off? I mean, again, I think Pulisic, in terms of his standards, has been below the quality that I'd like to see from him.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, there wasn't anybody. Again, center backs, you have 2 center backs have a moment where I give them a 5 on the day just overall. And then you have Pulisic not having a great game. And then you start to see if you don't have enough of those players at 8, 9s, or 10s, or 7 through 10s in terms of quality, consistency, you can get beat. You can get beat by anybody, whether it's Concacaf, any international game, including at the club level. And so I think, was there anybody that you think, or did you think that there's players that played bad?
I thought Miles Robinson was way off of it. He didn't look sharp. He was the one player that I thought it looks like he hasn't played a game in a couple months, and he just didn't look sharp. That wasn't the Miles Robinson that I think we grew to love through the Gold Cup and through the early phases of World Cup qualifying. And that bumps me out, because I'm a big Miles Robinson fan, but he did not shower himself with glory.
But this is the ebb and flow of a player.
Of course it is. Of course,
he's got to go through this to go to the next level. He's going to have to bounce back. But I agree with you. You just don't want it to happen at the national team level in a big game against Canada when you're trying to qualify for a World Cup.
No, I fully expect that was going to happen. Every player is going to go through it, including our Lord and Savior Christian Pulisic. You obviously want to minimize how long those lulls last, and right now, it looks like Pulisic's in the middle of something, maybe a little bit bigger than just the national team. It feels like there's a little personal crisis going on, and it's going to be hard. It's up to him to fight through it, and he's trying. I can sense that he's trying. But there are a couple good comments here. Dan Kane says Canada's a good team. People act like they are Martinique.
I don't
either. We knew going in. I mean, I predicted a draw.
We did our CONCACAF 11. I think we had more Canada players than anybody else, and that was a couple windows ago.
Wait till we get to our top 5 players in CONCACAF based on this current window. We'll see what that looks like. Cole Tripp also has another one. What's up, Cole? Just wondering, at what point do we actually blame the players versus constantly blaming the coach? And I think it's all intertwined. There has to be a plan that we can execute on, and sometimes I think what we get frustrated almost for the players is, what is the plan? Because if there is a plan and the players are looking like they did, at least offensively, that's not much of a plan, or they're not very good at executing said plan. So and as much as I think about pretty much all of my tactics defensively first before attacking wise, just based on how I cut my teeth for many years, it seems like, when we talk about defending, Heath, you don't want to defend in 1s and 2s, because if you defend in 1s and 2s, okay, that might work, to start a game when everybody's got a little bit of energy, you can cover for each other. But you're 60 minutes in, the other team's got some possession, you're still defending in 1s and 2s, you're dead. And they're just going to
and at the international level, it's just a game of numerical advantages. You send 3, you beat 2. You send 2, you beat 1.
Right. So when I think about that, conversely, for the attacking side of the ball, at times it feels like we're attacking in 1s and 2s. Like 1 or 2 guys have an idea of what they want to do, but not everybody else is keyed in. And when I see a lack of good timing on runs for crosses or whatever it may be, that's a red flag for everybody that's watching these games. If you have crosses that come in and there's nobody running, there's something off about what's happening. The timing's off. The number 9 or the trailing midfielder who's coming in late, he's not there in time. We don't have a lot of players in the box. It's because some players are urgent to get into the box and the other ones aren't. And that's when we're not on the same page. And that's what frustrates me, because I feel like 10 games into a window, Heath, we should be a little bit more fluid in terms of how we go forward. And in a way where if plan A isn't working, we're comfortable with what plan B is. And if plan B isn't working, then, as we say, almost as a default, take what the game's giving you. If they're giving you the wings and they're giving you the space out wide, then take that space. And I actually thought we've gotten better at that as it's gone along. But with regard to Canada, because we gave them the first goal, they just sat back and made it very difficult to play between the lines, and that made it very hard.
This goes right into this Tomas's comment where you can cross all you want, but when it's 1v5 in the box, you can't really expect the crosses to connect. The evolution was the intelligence of saying teams are going to sit back, right? So where's the space? They're going to close out the middle, space is wide. So we've got to get numbers in the box, well-timed runs and things like that. But then when you have a team that's organized and they're up 1-0, That is an iteration on that, which means the intelligence of that has to be, how are we going to pull those players in and out of those spaces? If you can't pull center backs in and out of those spaces and they have time to set and they're never having to have their sort of, sprinting back to the goal where they're facing the goal, where you have the potential for an own goal. We saw Honduras give up that own goal against Canada, where they're dropping back because Buchanan is
yeah, I mean,
is behind the back line and forced to play like that. Yeah. No. I mean, this is my point. It's like the evolution of how teams are going to play against you is never going to stop. You're going to look at this game and see how Canada beat the US, and then teams are going to say, okay, there's something to that. Now, we might not always score the first goal, but what are some other things that we can do to make it hard on the US? And I think the US then has to be able to then iterate and grow and evolve as a team. And some of that is in real time, right? And I don't think, like you said, we had enough numbers in and around their holding midfielders and in and around their center backs that were pulling these players out of spaces to create space for others. And again, that's not, again, like you said, if you do that with one or two players, it doesn't matter. They can sit in those blocks all day long because you communicate, you pass a player on, and it's easy. But if you start having these well-timed runs and it's 4 or 5 players and it's this dynamic movement where it's a little explosive diagonals and you're pulling players out, that's when it becomes hard. Jimmy, as a center back how hard that becomes. But if you've got one guy to worry about and it's just between you and another center back and your 6 is blocking the lanes, you just say, okay, hey, follow him here, track him here, communicate, cut off passing lanes, and the game becomes very predictable and easy, especially when you sit. Yeah.
No. I was just going to jump in and say that with regard to Cole's question, which is a question that I think can be used for every club and national team out there. If things are going wrong, is it the coach's fault? Is it the player's fault? And as Heath and I guess, get philosophic on you guys, wax philosophic, you're probably never as good as, we always say you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. And it's not all on the coach and it's not all on the players. It's always somewhere in the middle. And at some point, the players do have to take responsibility and be able to solve problems in real time, which is why, getting back to the other comment about Walker Zimmerman, I think he's just one of those players that gets people in good spots to make plays. He's an organizer. I can recognize it because I was a similar player. Not the best athlete, but I could organize. I communicated. Heath can speak to it.
I was going to say you weren't a great athlete, but
I wasn't. I knew that was what you're waiting to, like, wait a second. Don't let them think you're a top athlete. But I would fight for everything. And I was very, I think, or at least I'd like to think of myself as this, very predictable for my teammates. They knew what I was going to do in every single situation, which made it easier for them to read around me as to how to cover, or how to support the play if I did have the ball. And we need more of that. And I think we actually miss Walker Zimmerman because, as I mentioned in the recap, and I just want to reiterate it again, when you're a young center back like Chris Richards and Miles Robinson, how old are they? 21, 22? So when you're in that spot and everything's going great, but then all of a sudden you start a game, Heath, right? And you're like, yeah, go here, step right, step up. We're going to go 5 more yards. We're going to press, hold them in, whatever it is. You're giving them all this great information from the back because you can see the whole field. But when you're a young center back and you make a mistake, you immediately go inward and you stop organizing and you stop talking. And some of the things that I saw when I watched a little bit of the game on replay, our lines were really spaced out, even on the goal that they scored. Why is Zardes 30 yards away from our next line of midfield? Like, that blows my mind that we didn't even have a midfielder challenging for that initial header. It's not all on Zardes. And then we were just a step slow everywhere because our line was too deep. Those are little things. And I don't understand why that was happening. But when I start to think it out, a young center back, what would I do when I was doing that? That if I had made a mistake like Miles Robinson did.
Right. By the way, Robinson's 24, so he's not as long. He's not as young, but he is
but he still
seems like a little bit of a later bloomer in terms of.
And I know
what we expect, what we expect of a Richards, for example, who's 21. So, but I think age is more of like a experience that we're speaking to.
It just seems the more repetitions you get. I mean, Zimmerman's 29, so we're talking about a player who's been around and has just seen thousands more plays, thousands more situations, and has gone through kind of the rigors of, hey, I didn't play well or I made a bad play, but how can I still focus on what's best for the team and kind of get out of my own head? And that's not an easy skill to learn. I don't care if you're 24 or 21 or whatever it is.
Is there a value, Jimmy, in just being good at set pieces?
Oh,
because
100%.
It seems like we've got Weston McKennie, who scores a lot of goals with his head. Timing is great. We've got center backs that are pretty good in the air, right? We had Miles Robinson scoring huge goals. We've got Walker Zimmerman scores huge goals, both at the highest level. It just seems like we undervalue the set piece and the free kick, knowing that even when things are bad, and I remember this from my time of just the value of the set piece, right? In my era, we had Carlos Bocanegra, we had Oguchi Onyewu, we had a number of players that were dangerous in the box. Jay DeMeritt, most of our center backs were aerial threats in set pieces where you could squeak out something where that even on a bad day, draw that foul. That's why there was a value around the strikers like Brian McBride, Brian Ching, Connor Casey, these guys who would draw in fouls and get you opportunities in and around the box when you maybe go long periods without holding the ball or keeping the ball or a flow or a rhythm. They can slow the game down for you, allow you to take a breather, but also put you in dangerous positions, which I think the U.S. team is not taking advantage of right now. Very rarely do we get past the first man. Very rarely do we have a plan as to, okay, from a wide area, what's the danger? Where do we put it? And I mean, it just seems like it could be a solve for really bad days if you're very good at that, right? We've seen I can't remember who off the top of my head at the international level was crucial. I don't know if it's like a Portugal or whoever that are just crucial at just set pieces, right? You get your chance, you finish it, and then you can fight like hell to hold on to a lead or a draw or whatever.
Well, it also puts a lot of pressure on the defending team to have to be perfect, especially if you're generating a lot of set pieces. At some point, somebody's not going to have their mark. Somebody dropped off a little bit deeper than they should, and that's going to give you a really good look at goal. And so, yes, I mean, when we look at some of the biggest games that have ever been played, the fine margins sometimes are decided by set pieces. And as you know, set pieces isn't really about talent. It's about desire, both defensively and offensively, getting into a space, making sure you're ready to go, and making the other team, again, sweat. And we did once against Canada on that header, even though if we look at it, and Borjan's made a great save, but it was still kind of in his wheelhouse. It wasn't like he had to dive crazy to dig it out and get his and then we didn't get a run of play shot on goal until the 60th minute when Brendan Aronson actually had both corners and hit it right at Borjan, which was a bit disappointing because we finally got into a good spot and we could see they were a little bit nervous. So, yeah, I think set pieces are incredibly valuable. And I think I'm preaching to the choir here. Everybody knows it. But the timing of when you score those, especially as you start to pile those up, and the more threatening you become, the more energy that the defending team has to really commit to try to keep that out. Another thing, too, about set pieces that maybe doesn't get talked about a lot, it's an incredible opportunity to keep another team pinned in. So even if you don't win the first ball, if they try to clear it, you're in such good team shape, or if you're a team that's well organized, you can keep them pinned in. And it's hard for them because they've committed so many players back behind the ball. Yeah. They're actually not in a good position to transition. Yeah. Now, if you have a striker that's good at kind of running the channels and it's got some speed, it maybe can break out and hurt you. Well, that we've seen that from time to time. But more often than not, if you've got good team shape, it's a great opportunity to maintain some pressure on the opposing team. And I just don't feel like we did that to Canada in particular. And that's what hurts the most, is that these are little things that we could have done a little bit better. And we weren't even good at those little things yesterday. So the whole dominant thing from Greg Berhalter bums me out a little bit. Were we in control of a good portion of the game? Yeah, maybe. But
and control it down.
That control didn't actually lead to anything that I thought was that threatening that would consider or manifest the word dominant, which I don't think.
And by the way, anybody that's watching this right now, help this to get to more people so people can join in on this conversation. We love the debates that happen in the comment section. So hit that like button. That sends it out to more people, triggers the algorithm, so to speak. So get that out, smash that like button so more people can join in on this chat or debate. Jimmy, the reason I asked you that question before is because Dan Kane, it was based on his comment that he said is, do you agree that someone not named Christian should be taking our set pieces on Wednesday? And every Weston long throw instead of a long throw creating an opportunity instead became a counterattack. And obviously I do like the long throws and things like that. But when a team has an ability to get into really good shape on long throws, they've got to be precise as well, because you are sending numbers forward. If you're sending those numbers forward, you need to try to get something out of it. But what's your thoughts on changing the set piece taker?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing somebody but Christian take it. I think he will start. I will get into it on our preview, which will drop tomorrow. But it would be nice to maybe see somebody else get a shot at it, even if you're like, hey, Brendan Aronson's going to take him for the first half. And if they're good, then he's going to get the second half. It's just funny when we think about Christian Pulisic that he started this window as the captain. And by the end of it, he's going to not be the captain and not be our set piece taker.
Yeah. But that's a form thing. I get it. The recognition, I think, is important. The recognition of a lack of form is important. Like you said, it is totally okay. Jimmy, you know how many bad games I had in my lifetime?
A lot. I've seen you play.
Yeah. Most of them, right? And so most of the games I played were bad games. But there are times when you just feel off, right? And Steve Cherundolo actually used to tell me things about, like, even when you're having your worst day, find a way to contribute, right? Or find a way to blend in so that you're not this eyesore of like, man, I got to get rid of that guy, got to do it. And sometimes that could be as simple as being like, hey, dude, I'm not feeling these set pieces. You take them. Or like in real time, players stepping up and saying, hey, let me hit in a few, and see how it goes. Maybe it doesn't work out either, but I think it's a solid approach to things of just trying to do things differently, because it's the sort of age-old saying, if you do what you always did, you get what you always got. And I think this national team has a little bit of this one-dimensional. They're growing where you have, plan A, you have a little bit into plan B, but that's where we start to get stuck, because we're training this plan A and plan B, and then teams come out and go, well, let's plan for this plan A, plan B. And then when they do that well, or the circumstances don't go our way, we really struggle to evolve into what's this next thing that's going to help us to get a win. That could be as simple as set pieces and making that the case. That could be as changing the style of play. It could be switching a formation. It could be all kinds of different systems of play that I don't necessarily have the answers to, but I don't think the national team in real time or between Greg Berhalter and the players are able to solve that problem and figure out where are we going to get our goal from.
Yeah, no. That's a good point. There's a question here from Jackie D. He says, are set pieces harder when the ball is cold? Yeah, everything sucks when it's cold, but when you're playing for the national team and you know what's at stake to qualify for a World Cup, you just gotta push through that. You can't be thinking about it too much. But yeah, I'm sure there's something that goes through your mind, like, I'm going to be heading a break right now to score. Well, whatever. Both teams have to play in those. It's not like one team's playing in tropical weather and the other one's playing in ice cold. But I think that's a valuable comment. Something that potentially some players might be like, I don't know if I want to head this one subconsciously, right? And so they don't really attack the ball the same way. I remember Chris Klein, who used to play with me with the national team and also with the Kansas City Wizards at the time, now supporting Kansas City. We'd always make fun of him because he'd go up for headers, Heath, right? Mm-hmm. And he'd jump up and he looked like he was going to go for the perfect header, and then he'd like turtle head it. Like he'd do the turtle head, and we're like, dude, what are you doing? Like and it would throw us off because you thought he had a nice beat on it. He was going to get the header, and then he'd kind of like duck out and do the turtle head, and it would flick off his head, or he wouldn't get it at all. And now we're scrambling because we thought he had a nice beat on it. Super funny. Chris Klein, now president of the LA Galaxy, by the way, Mr. Turtlehead. So next time you see him, tell him Jimmy Conrad said, hey, talk to us about those turtlehead headers. I'm sure he'll really appreciate that.
That's well done. Ryan C has a great question. Say, as a left back, what were your instructions for crossing in the U.S. men's national team under Bob Bradley? I mean, there wasn't always an instruction. You kind of take what the game gives you. If you are able to get down behind and whip a ball behind the back line before they can sit, that's obviously the most dangerous. But, you also want to put your head up at times and know if there's not players in the box and there's not the run there, you don't want to whip a ball in. And occasionally you do that because you have nowhere else to go. But for the most part, you want to pull that back and keep the ball and then have a word and saying, hey, I'm in good spots. You need to get into good positions and things like that. But it's all fluid in the game. And so a lot of that goes into the intelligence of the players when you get into those situations, the decisions you make with the ball. But hey, everyone, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Jimmy, we are going to talk about the top 5 CONCACAF players in current form right now. And we got a lot to debate and a lot to figure out. So we will be right back.
Here we go.
I'm jumping around, and the romp is so rough, it's so comfortable now. Let's fly.
Touchdown! Unbelievable! Incredible!
I think we both know there's more to it than that.
This is going to be a good thing for everybody.
Hello, Master Chief.
Here we go, yeah, come on. Here we go.
Wow, that gets me hyped, dude. That's not even a commercial. That's just like a good vibe and energy. I like that.
Totally good vibes, and I want more Clifford the Big Red Dog in my life. So I'm excited. I'm definitely signing up.
That's a lot of fun. Jimmy, let's move on to something very serious. Right? We're going to debate the top CONCACAF players in current form. We're going to go with our top 5s. You're going to go first. We're going to throw the graphic up on the screen. We're going to walk through that. We're going to criticize it. I would love everybody that's watching this right now to criticize Jimmy as well, or agree with him if you agree with some of the things that he's saying. I'm not saying to give Jimmy a hard time necessarily, but if you feel like he deserves it, then do it. But otherwise, hear him out first. Let him walk the plank a little bit on his decisions.
Well, yeah, thanks, Heath. Glad I get to go first. And now I can't even set it up, but producer Des is throwing it up there for me. I just want to have a preface of saying that this is just for this window. If we're talking current, like the current of current forms, this is what I'm going with. I'm going to start with Milan Borjan in goal. Not only is he tremendous as a goalkeeper wearing sweatpants, but I also think he's a tremendous leader. I think the team responds to him, and for as stout as they are defensively, they still need him to come up and make a couple big saves. And he did that. 2 consecutive clean sheets so far in this window. And he actually came out with a quote. I don't know if you saw this or not, but he came out and said the last 4 or 5 times we've played the U.S., they seem scared to play us. And that wasn't like that before. And that's like a sign of how things are changing in a positive way for Canadian soccer. Now, I am paraphrasing, but that is interesting. And I like his confidence. And I'm actually very excited that Canada is going to qualify for a World Cup. That's a very big deal. Now, number 4, I went with Tecatito because he didn't start against Jamaica. But when he came on, the game changed. And yes, they were up a man. The game's a little bit easier and Jamaica's tired. But I think he was one of the main catalysts he didn't score. But I just thought his energy and his desire to break the lines and to make something happen ultimately led to their 2 goals in 3 minutes to beat Jamaica after coming back from 1-0 down. And then in the 0-0 draw against Costa Rica, he started, he came off. It maybe wasn't as influential, but when he's on, he's a very special player, as everybody knows. And it's a little unfortunate that they couldn't get more out of that. Then Jonathan David scored against Honduras, a great counterattacking goal, world-class goal. I mean, he took 3 world-class touches to seal the deal against Honduras. And even though he didn't hit the back of the net against the U.S., it was very clear that we were concerned about him. And obviously he's doing great things for Lille in Liga. And then I have Keylor Navas. Maybe he's a little bit higher than some people would prefer. But when he's in between the sticks for Costa Rica, he always gives them a chance. They have 2 consecutive clean sheets. And they beat Panama 1-0. Brian Ruiz is honorable mention here. A 65th minute game winner in that one, which is a valuable 3 points for them. And then to go to Stadio Azteca and get a clean sheet. I think there was 35 total shots Mexico had, something crazy. And not that they got too many on goal, but I think his mere presence makes Costa Rica, or elevates everybody around him. And he is single-handedly, for me, giving them a chance. If Keylor Navas had played that whole game against us in Columbus when Timothy Weah, if he started, right, Keylor Navas, and then he came out, or did he not even start that game? Either way, if he had played that game, I think that result would have been much different because the goalkeeper made an error on that second goal that Timo Weah scored. And I don't think Keylor Navas makes that same error. So his presence obviously is very important. And then I'm going with Kyle Larin. I mean, not only did he score against us, he also scored 2 against Mexico in the prior window. And I know that wouldn't be as current in terms of current form, but the guy changes. It's a different Kyle Larin when he plays for Canada as opposed to playing for his club. And with these goals that he scored, he broke the scoring record that he shared with Dwayne De Rosario. And I just think he's the hottest player right now. And what I love is and even with that first goal with the U.S., and remember that Matt Turner save in the second half? Kyle Larin was the first to pounce on the shot. Like, he was the one that anticipated that Matt Turner might not be able to hold on to it. And he was there first. And thankfully, Matt Turner made another save. Well, not that it mattered. We still lost 2-0, but he just has that belief that I'm going to make something happen today. I'm going to put myself in good positions to make that happen. So that's my top 5 list. I'm happy to shake up that order. I'm sure there's other players that could be entered into it. But given how lackluster I think the U.S. have been, maybe if Anthony Robinson had a better game against Canada, or if we'd gotten a draw, there might have been an American in there. But overall, I had to leave them off based on some of the performances I've been seeing elsewhere.
And so I'm assuming, to answer Duncan's question, no Davies because he's not currently in form because he's not currently playing with the national team.
That's right.
And then Tecatito, not really, is a little bit of criticism. Alexis Vega.
Fair. That's fair. I thought he was good against Jamaica. That's fine.
And yeah, I think that's overall a pretty solid. There's a couple similarities in there. And maybe we could just throw up my list and we can compare and contrast at that point if our producer Des has it ready to go. Yeah, I actually
I like it.
Eric Davis obviously keeping them in the game, scoring 2 goals in their last for
that's a good shout. I was trying to decide which Panamanian player I wanted, but they lost the first game, so I was like, Tico's won and draw. You don't have any Ticos on here, man. Show some respect for Keylor Navas.
That's true. I don't have any Ticos on there. I threw on Henry Martin just because I think he delivers for the team when they need him. And he continues to not get the run of play. Comes in the 60th, 70th, 80th minute. They continue to go with Funes Mori. I don't know if he's necessarily the solution as a starter, but he seems to contribute at big times for the national team. It doesn't get the love that I think some of the other players get. Eric Davis, again, 2 goals in this window. I just think it's really important. They're hunting right now. I think Panama are still knocking on the door.
Dude, they're 1 point behind us. They're more than hunting
into a World Cup. And they continue every time you expect, the stereotype of like, do they have the depth? Do they have the ability to go multiple games? And can they go through an entire qualifying cycle? They somehow rise to the occasion. I put Yunus Musa in here just because I think he's a bright spot for me for the national team. I don't think he was bad in the last game. He didn't penetrate the way that he did so far in this camp, but when I see him and I see his confidence on the ball and I see the things that he does, He's just a different type of player, and I don't think we're utilizing him in the best way. And for his age and whatnot, he's one of the few sure starters in the national team for me. Every time you're going to put it out, if he's fit and healthy, and I just like the way he plays. Again, take the result against Mexico, against Canada aside, he's just one that when I'm building out a match day roster, he might be moving up into my top, maybe even 2 of players that I need to play. If we're ever going to get to the point where we can play through teams and break lines of pressure and be comfortable on the ball and be technical and all of those types of things. And then above that, I've just got Milan Borjan, just like you did, and Kyle Larin. I mean, watching Milan do the things that pissed me off for 90 minutes, where he's taunting the players, he's getting the crowd wound up. He ran to the corner flag to do a dummy. He's got this gamesmanship stuff that's going on and making the big saves that, you can tell what it means to him, and you can tell how big of a deal this is. And you can tell by his comments of, repaying Canada for the opportunity to play for the national team and the life that it's given him and all of that, just knowing that he's stepped up to the occasion. I still don't consider him one of the best, maybe even 2 or 3 goalkeepers in Concacaf, but in terms of form right now and what his contributions are, similar to a lot of that back line from Canada, maybe I'm not giving them as much respect as I should. I should definitely, but again, on paper, versus the form that they're in, I put him too. And then Kyle Larin just scoring goals. You go back to last year, scoring a ton of goals for the national team, just broke Dwayne De Rosario's record. And all the hype has been around Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, all the things that they're doing in Europe. But Kyle Larin has just quietly gone about. When you go back to the last qualifying round that Canada had to go through, Kyle Larin was the top scorer. You add that together over last year, he was the top scorer in Concacaf and in World Cup qualifying, I think maybe even globally, just because of the sheer matches they had to play to get to that point. And so, just a phenomenal.
For sure. I think just to make sure it's clear for everybody listening or watching, we're basically just keeping our current form on this window. So I went with teams that didn't lose. I only went with players that had either won both games or won and draw, or had a draw. And yes, Weston McKennie's a great shout, Calvin, because of current form of Juventus. He's been lights out, and I get it. But in game one,
he's hot one, cold one. He just doesn't play the same. When he's the workhorse, blue collar Weston McKennie, we get something different. When Weston McKennie after that game gets a little bit of that what seems like swag and ego, where he kind of passes that whole humility plus work rate, he becomes like starts doing random spin moves all over the place and starts doing things that he didn't do on the things that made him good. That's at least my take.
Somebody said to me, and somebody's value or opinion that I value said to me that Weston McKennie hurts our team shape because when he starts to get a little bit more adventurous, we aren't necessarily as set up to defend a quick counter or a counter that comes our way, and it puts a lot of pressure on Tyler Adams and others and I wanted your thoughts on that, because I hadn't really looked at him that way. I felt like I want him to have the freedom to be himself, so I wasn't as worried about it. And if we have a block of 4 or 5, we should be able to handle any counterattack, in my humble opinion. But Anthony Robinson, A-Rob, is also someone who is a bit adventurous going forward and maybe takes more risk than he should. We saw it in El Salvador game. Maybe we saw it a little less in Canada because the game didn't allow him to bomb forward as much, or in the way.
Well, they were sitting deep, so they were already high in a high and wide situation. They were up a little bit higher just as starting points when the ball was there, and the counterattacks were just a little bit fewer and far between in terms of the exposure, taking risks in the run of play. But I think the Weston thing, I don't think necessarily it's a shape issue with him. I just think it's a mentality thing with him that I think in terms of his high highs and low lows, I would love to see that consistency that you can get out of him in terms of not consistency, because I do think he's consistent. It's more of his consistency and his style of play. Who are you as a player? What's the type of player are you? Are you this big flashy guy that you become when you're ultra confident, or are you this blue collar workhorse guy that's technical and he can score late runs in the box and do a lot of this dirty work that makes him very, very good connecting the lines? Are you that guy? Because I always see these 2 different Weston McKennies from time to time, and I think it's more that than I like when he roams and drifts and things like that, because you need him in that spot. And Tyler Adams does a great job of covering that ground to put out fires, and Yunus Musa can be a 2-way player as well. So I'm not so worried about the tactics of that. I mean, do you agree with that, or do you feel differently?
No. We're on the same page. I think we're saying the same things in maybe a little bit of a different way, but I like when Weston McKennie has that freedom. But there are moments where you wish that maybe, and I guess this comes with a little bit of age, right? You pick your spots of knowing when to go forward and when to stay, and kind of getting an understanding of a rhythm and the flow of the game, which I feel like we've been seeing to great effect recently with Juventus. It feels like he's really settled in. And in some ways, we could argue that's why they thought that Bentancur was, they could send him on his way. Now that I know they got Dennis Zakaria in from Mönchengladbach in this transfer window, but But I think McKennie's done well enough for Maxi Allegri where, hey, we can maybe release a Kulusevski and a Bentancur where I think he could play both spots, Weston McKennie, because we have what Weston's been playing well for us. So I love that for him in particular. But, sometimes the roles will change with the U.S. because sometimes we will need him to sit back and absorb. Like if we're playing a France, or say we draw France in the World Cup or whatever, that adventurousness is going to have to be tamped down. And we have to be able to be comfortable in moving in different team shapes to make that happen. We're going to face one of the big countries in our group for sure. And sometimes our luck, we get groups of death. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
Yeah.
But
well, Mario Altador says McKennie dominated yesterday, almost scored, and Boyan made a fantastic save. Yeah, he did make a fantastic save, and I think it was a good attempt by Weston McKennie. But this is where I think when people watch it from a 30,000-foot view, you see the things that he's doing that I find unnecessary at times that he doesn't do when he's in this whole grind mode, right? Like I said, the spin moves, the extra touches, rolling over the ball, trying to draw players in, play a little bit more, so to speak, creative minded that I don't always think has a ton of substance.
Are you saying, I'm trying to remember where he did that. Was that more like in a third of the field that he shouldn't? Because I don't mind him doing it. I don't mind him doing it. Obviously in the attacking third, you kind of want to, I don't mind that. But if it's in the middle
more
third,
of like when he's putting his foot on top of the ball, put his foot on the ball to draw players in. It's just a little bit more of this. It lacks substance to me because when I see him at his best, he's moving at a quick pace. He's changing the point of attack.
Yeah,
he's getting
making his decisions quickly.
He's making his decisions quickly. He's not like I equate this to when Pogba plays fast or when Pogba plays slow, right? Pogba foot on the ball, not my favorite player. Pogba when he's motivated and moving forward and connecting the game, amazing, unbelievable, world class, right? So here's another one saying Jackson Roberts says we're hyping up Borjan too much based on recency bias. That's the whole point. That's current form. That is recency bias. But if it's for this window, it's fair. But novice is still better. I agree.
If you looked at my list, I had novice second
and
Borjan fifth. So
maybe Jackson just came on. But
we're on the same page.
I just think when a player rises to the occasion like that in a national team game against the U.S., who are supposed to be the best in Concacaf and have proven that against Mexico, our opponent to be the king of Concacaf, and rises to that occasion to show that Canada are in first place and continue to be in first place and are the best team in CONCACAF right now. I think that's just worth mentioning to step up and again, be that motivating factor, so much so that I was emotionally distraught the things that he was doing because it felt like he was taunting me for the entire game, all the stuff that Borjan was doing. But yeah, I don't know if do you second guess any of your top five there, Jimmy?
Well,
anybody that you think you left out or is tough cut?
No, well, yeah, there's some tough cuts, of course. I think
who's your manager? Who's your manager of your top five?
That's a great question. I mean,
it's got to be Herdman.
It's got to be Herdman. Yeah. I mean, that's the easy choice. I mean, I'm always trying to throw Panama a bone because Panama are only 1 point behind Mexico and the U.S. in the standings after 10 games, and I find that to be incredibly impressive. Yeah. Despite the fact that they don't really have that one big giant name or two that is really driving the team. It feels like more of a collective than anything individual. And I feel like Canada has that a little bit, but then on top of that, Canada does have that spirit, but then on top of that, you add Jonathan David and Kyle Larin, who's playing out of his mind, and Alphonso Davies when he's healthy, and Tejan Buchanan will step up and make a world-class play and change a game. So they've got a nice mix. Canada just probably just a little bit more of a talented Panama in terms of that collective spirit that I think we're seeing. So that Panama game, we play at home is obviously going to be massive, and we need to get the 3 points against Honduras. Again, we'll be doing the preview tomorrow, so make sure you don't miss that. So I guess the question here, and this is out for everybody in the community as well, and Heath, I'm going to throw it to you first. Which fan base is angrier? The U.S. men's national team, the Mexican national team, or Arsenal fans? I just threw that one in. Arsenal fans are always the angriest. Oh, he's frozen. I thought I set that up really, really well because Heath is an Arsenal fan and he's frozen right now. Well, you guys can answer that question. No, he's back. He's back.
Yeah. Sorry.
No problem, Heath. So which fan base do you think is more upset?
Well, we've got the poll question: Mexico versus U.S. Which one's angry?
I know. I threw Arsenal fans in there because they're always angry. But yeah. Okay.
I mean, honestly, I think Mexico fans are much more upset because they've been talked out a lot longer than they've been Berhalter out. U.S. fans have been Berhalter out, but I think as these games go on, it's tough to say who's more angry because both expect a clear path to a World Cup. I think both teams qualify automatically. Having said that, Panama can't be written off whatsoever. I think if we qualify for a World Cup, you start to question of like, is this person the right? Is your manager the right manager? Is this team the right team? Are we developing in the right way? You know, the U.S. is actually looking forward in terms of the quality and talent and players that we have moving abroad, challenging themselves in new environments, players coming through MLS academies, rising up, playing at young ages, and the first teams being sold abroad. So I think there's a number of different things to be excited about as a fan base. But in terms of results within the national team, it's got to be Mexico right now because they've always historically, maybe the U.S. is catching up to that. Maybe that's a good sign of the future in terms of our fan base when we're this critical. But as of right now, it says, on 367 votes that the U.S. men's national team is.
That's interesting. I think what I find, I'm going to look at this match really quick.
The U.S. also lost to Canada, so it's an easy time to be much angrier than a draw with Mexico.
So Mexico generated 25 shots against Costa Rica, 73% possession.
Right.
And they're doing things right. They're getting in opportunities to score. Funes Mori isn't that option. I think for us as a fan base.
Well, you got Raul Jimenez, which sucks.
That's what I mean.
Him,
so you can be pissed off all you want, but they have a number 9. He's just hurt.
Yeah.
And they have really talented wingers in Alexis Vega and Chucky Lozano and Tecatito. Like they have guys that can step up and make plays. I think the problem with Tata Martino right now is that he's got this over-reliance on some of the older guys. And that's part of the problem. We don't have that same problem, or we did for a while. That was our last World Cup qualifying cycle. We relied on maybe too many old guys and didn't bring in the young guys, but maybe the young guys weren't ready to take that responsibility. And that's just where we were in 2018. But for this particular window, we do rely on a lot of young guys to help see us through. And maybe we need to rely on a couple older guys, but we tried that with Jossie Zardes. That isn't necessarily working either. So it's interesting, but I don't think we have that out and out number 9 that could help solve some of these problems and not scoring goals.
Man, look at Canada's goal difference. That is wild.
Yeah, it's excellent. So Canada's goal difference is +12, US is +6, and Mexico's is +5. Now, we've given up 7 goals through 10 games. Costa Rica's second, giving up 7 goals in 10 games. Canada's only given up 5 goals in 10 games and scored 17. So I don't know, man. It's I can understand. I can understand why both fan bases are upset. You know, and Greg Berhalter came in, I'd say, somewhat acrimoniously because his brother Jay was third in charge at U.S. Soccer. It felt like there was some nepotism at play. There probably was some nepotism at play. Let's not BS anybody. And Greg gets the job. Jay ends up leaving, and it takes Greg a year to end up taking the job. Remember, they took a year. And I love Dave Sarachan, but we missed out on an opportunity there to potentially even hire Tata Martino. What I find interesting is that we were clamoring for Tata Martino, and I know infinitely more Tata out people than Tata in. And so I don't know. It's another one of those things that I mentioned earlier. Just be careful what you wish for. Maybe Tata wouldn't have been the right guy, but I think it would have felt like a more fair choice to have somebody that we interviewed and gone through that than just handing the job over to Greg.
I will say that Greg's got a pretty good record, though, with the national team. And again, we went through COVID. We've gone through a period. You played a lot of these sort of like camp cupcake type friendlies against teams, C teams, and not knowing who we have and they have. But like you go back to summer and you still got a Gold Cup. You still got a Nations League. You've still got a Dos Acero. You've still got a number of these things to look positively towards. It just always feels like the moment we're going to round the corner or change is imminent or like permanence is right around the corner, we kind of take a step back. And I don't know if I think that's always going to be the nature of the national team because of the fluidity of players coming in and out, as well as just the difficulties of qualifying in CONCACAF.
Right.
That's not to back up the lack of results at times from Greg Berhalter, but I think we're still in prime position. You know, if we're talking in 2 days time after a result against Honduras, where now you're much closer, maybe one win out in your last 3 from qualifying for a World Cup, then maybe you're not as critical. Now, in terms of big picture, long-term thinking, that's another conversation. But getting us here, we had Bruce Arena the last time around. We had Jurgen Klinsmann the last time around, and both of them were incapable of getting the team to a World Cup. So, there is some value in the results that he's had so far.
I want to jump in and say, you're right with Greg. I mean, there's always going to be ups and downs, whether it's Tata Martino with Mexico or Greg Berhalter with the U.S. or whoever's in charge of the U.S. It's not easy to qualify for the World Cup in any region, okay, including CONCACAF, despite what people over in Europe think it's super easy. It's just not that straightforward, and that's fine. They're fair to have that opinion. They're on the outside looking in. Now, Anthony Riley says something I appreciate. I don't think we're angry. We're just confused and concerned. Going to qualify, but will we get out of the group stage? And this makes me think about something I said a while back, that 2022 wasn't going to be the World Cup where we really, I think, took that giant step.
Depending on the draw, we could take a giant step.
We
but
could.
The draw is a big part of how you do in a World Cup.
But think about where our team's going to be in 4 years when we're hosting the tournament in 26. All that experience that they've accrued through this process,
at least half this group,
is going to be put to good use. And then we have a lot of talented young players that are coming up underneath that are just going to make our team, in my humble opinion, lights out. And I expect a deep run in 2026. This one, though, I always felt like was going to be the experience that this core group needed to really take bigger steps in 26. You're right, though. We could draw a group that's manageable. We get out. I wouldn't want to face us over 90 minutes in a knockout game where maybe we weren't the favorite, because we could surprise you. But outside of that, okay, maybe we get to the quarterfinal if things play out the right way like they did in 2002. But I agree with Anthony that I does give me some concern, because I don't think we've identified our best team yet. And when teams figure out a way to slow us down, I don't think we're very good at solving problems, whether it's from the coaching staff at halftime, whether it's in game, whether it's having a couple days to look at it and then coming back to the next game. You're like, okay, like, what are we doing to still stay consistently on the front foot, putting teams under pressure and really putting our stamp on the game? Now, I'm a firm believer, and you're welcome to disagree. Anybody listening, it's fine. We're all friends here, right? We all want the same thing. Well, not all of us, because not everybody supports the U.S. men's national team in the comments. But I'm a firm believer that, well, I think team shape solves a lot of problems. But oh my God, I lost my train of thought because I was trying to make jokes. But if we could just, oh my God, I lost it, Heath.
Man, I was going to be a blinding one too.
It was
revolutionary.
You know what? I retired due to concussions, and so you got to forgive me when this stuff happens. But yeah. Anyway, just jump on anything I said, and then I'm going to remember it, and I'll be like, oh yeah, of course.
No, I mean, I think that's a great point. Some of the things that you were saying, and so yeah, I don't disagree necessarily. I think we're at a point now when you're looking at 2026. That's the big goal, right? That was always the big goal. We need to hold these players to a high standard, and know that it's always going to be a slog through qualifying. But we've got players playing at big clubs and big games, Champions League games, at a level and at a consistency we've never had before. You expect them to implement that into the national team. Now, that also means you have players playing at different types of leagues, different styles of play, and all these things. But ultimately, we should be able to get out of the first 7 minutes of a game against Canada to keep ourselves in a match again. And then if you're not, you should have enough not emotional, but you should have enough IQ within your team to say, how are we going to get that goal back, right? Is it going to be from set pieces? Are we trying to draw fouls? Are we trying to play scrappy? Is it going to be from the wide areas, through the middle, combination play? You should understand where the game is going to do it, knowing that Canada, we're going to make it very difficult for you as it is. And then you give up a goal, they're going to make it even harder. Any final thoughts, Jimmy?
Well, yes, I have one. And Yasmin's like, oxygen to the brain is necessary. Thank you, Yasmin. I appreciate that. I did remember what I was going to say, and it is team shape related, but I think you can still be in control of the game even when you don't have the ball. And I don't necessarily know if we have got that. Canada were, right? I don't know if we've got that solved yet. Even when we have leads.
Canada don't have the talent that we have across the board, in theory. But what they do have is coming off of a Gold Cup where they fought, they were disciplined, they fought, they built a mentality. And then they didn't have most of those players, right? They had Kyle Larin who got injured, I think, during the Gold Cup, if I remember correctly. They also lost Octagonal during the World Cup, who's another player. They lost some of those pieces, and they were just left with scraps to fight and build a foundation of mentality first. And now you add all those pieces, but that hasn't changed the way that they played. None of those players are thinking like, again, I go back to their very first qualifier when they come out of the Gold Cup and they thought that they were better than they were. And Honduras punched them in the face and probably could have won that game. And that woke Canada up to say, okay, we got to go back to basics. We're going to fight like hell to win these games. We're going to fight like hell to qualify for a World Cup. And then we have quality players that can win us matches. And they dominate some matches as well. Don't get me wrong. But I think those two things together is what made the national team good when we're at our best. And we've lost. I don't know if we have that identity in the way that Canada does right now.
Yeah, well said. That's my final words. You took them right out of my mouth, Heath Pearce.
All right. Well, then let's wrap this up then, Jimmy, because there's a lot more to go. Thank you guys for tuning in. Jimmy and I will be going live again on Wednesday after the Honduras game. So mark that in your calendar. Before that, though, I'll be going live again at 6 p.m. Eastern time to recap all the deadline day action with CBS Sports' best soccer minds. Jimmy and I will be doing an extensive preview of Wednesday's Octagonal games. Before we go, though, make sure you follow the Qué Golazo podcast, leave it a glowing review and a rating. And on the YouTube channel, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and Jimmy and I will see you guys next time.